All right. Okay. Chigozie. All right. I think you should be able to share your screen, right? Chigozie, can you go ahead and share your screen?
I can't share my laptop screen because the Zoom is on my phone, but I can
Oh,
turn on my camera and show if that's okay.
okay, go ahead. Let's see. Let's see how that looks like.
Um, how do I make this? Okay, so this is what I came up with. So using the whole search bar up here, then centering the main header and the paragraphs under here, as
okay.
well as a button. I also included a title to the button.
Okay.
And I used an external CSS to do it. Yeah, and I also made the link each go somewhere. So if I click home, it will take me somewhere
Another
about
page.
somewhere else services.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
And or with an external CSS. Use it
Okay.
basically. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Well done. Well done. All right. Who has attempted the assignment apart from Chigozie? Okay, Chineye. Chineye, can you share your screen? Hello, Chineye, can you hear me? If you can hear me, can you share your screen? Okay. All right. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let me quickly do a brief recap of what we've learned so far, right?
Okay, good afternoon, good evening. Mr. Shea is having network issues, so he'll join very soon. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? Sorry, I think my internet connection dropped, so I had to switch to another. Sorry for the interruption. All right, let's move on. Okay, so I was saying that we started with how the internet works, and we talk about request and response, and we talk about the client making the request and the server providing the response. Basically, that's the principle, right? And we talk about web page generally. Web page generally are made up of a web page is made up of basically multimedia files, text, images, and all of that, right? So the client, which is your web browser, is making the request, and the server is providing the response. All right, so that's it basically, request and response. Then we'll talk about how to then design or develop a web page, right? Which brought us to the language, which we refer to as the markup language, HTML, right? And we said HTML simply means hypertext markup language, and is one of the most commonly used languages over the web, right? And in HTML, we'll talk about what a tag is. And we said we have the opening tag and the closing tag. Then we have...
Sorry, I'm not seeing your screen. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, basically, I'm just doing a recap of what we've learned so far. All right. When it's time for me to write the code, I will share my screen. So we talk about tags, and we talk about opening tag and closing tag, and how a complete tag is an element. And we also explore some attributes of elements, right? Before we then dive into designing a page and using CSS to style that page. Like we said, like we all agree that HTML is like a skeleton when compared to a complete human being, and CSS majorly is used to style up the HTML, right? And once that is done, you then have a complete, beautiful website, right? Then we commence designing a website. And last week, we were able to some extent add up some flesh to that website. And we then said, I then gave us an assignment to say, okay, based on what we've learned so far, can you go back and do something with what we've learned so far? But from what I've seen so far, I've seen quite a number of comments. Probably maybe some people are just joining the class for the first time. Some people have not even installed the IDEs, which is integrated development environment, which some people refer to as the editor that we are using, which is the Visual Studio Code. And I remember a few weeks back, I dropped the link and all of that. So if you have not downloaded it, you can just Google Visual Studio Code and try to download the editor, right? And once that is done, then you can then begin writing your code. Like I said, you can also make use of Notepad or Notepad++. But the advantage of using editors like Visual Studio Code is that, it's kind of intelligent, right? It's intelligent, and it can, suggest. It can suggest it can give you some suggestions. If you're using IDs like maybe Notepad or Notepad++, you don't have the opportunity to actually do a live preview of your code. So which means that each time you want to preview what you've written, you have to then launch a browser to be able to do that. But Visual Studio Code avails you the opportunity of viewing whatsoever you're writing. So as you're writing the code, you can also view the outcome. That's the advantage of Visual Studio Code, right? And you have to install that extension called Live Preview. All right. So that was where we stopped last week, right? And it seems like many of us didn't attempt that assignments. So we can just move on from there. All right, so let me share my screen. So as usual, I'll give us the opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the class. So if you have any question, you can then reserve them till the end of the class, when you have the opportunity to ask your question. All right. But before we go into the question and answer session, we can just go ahead and do one or two things before we then take the question and answer. All right. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
sir.
anyone
Yes, sir.
hear me?
We can see the screen, sir.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay. I just want to be sure that we're on the same page. All right, so this is the folder we created, right? This web folder. That was the folder we created on the desktop, right? And I said, in structuring your web application or your website, right? It's advisable that you use folders to maintain whatever file, whatever image that you'll be using as far as that project is concerned, right? So you can always make reference to the right folder and the right file. So for example, you might have multiple files of CSS. You might have multiple files of HTML. You might have multiple images, depending on the size of the project, right? So it's advisable that you create, so the parent folder can contain your HTML, all the HTML files. But once you are doing your CSS, it's advisable that you create another folder inside the parent folder now and name that folder CSS. Then you can now all of your CSS related files can now reside inside that CSS folder. The same thing is applicable to images. So if you have so many images, right? So you can just put all of those images together and create a folder called images and keep all of those images inside that folder. That way, it is easier for you to reference those images, right? It is easier for you to reference those CSS files. So even if you're linking them, so it becomes easier for you to link them. And don't forget, external style of CSS is always advisable. And the reason being, if you have a web site of, let's say, 20 pages, and you use internal style of CSS, and at the end of the day, you then discover that, oh, sorry, the color that you've used somewhere is not the exact color, or there's a mistake as regarding the text on the particular page or something, and you have used internal style of CSS. It simply means that you have to open up all of those 20 files, edit and save in each of those files before you then deploy the app. But if you use an external CSS, all you've done, all you need to do is just basically to link that CSS file to all of the HTML pages, right? So let's say you have a file, you have a CSS file that is probably responsible for, let's say, the header. And that header is available on 20 pages. So what you can do is just to go to that CSS file that is available for that header, right? And just change whatever you want to change there. You change the color, whatever you want to change, you change it, you save. And automatically, whatever changes you have made, will automatically be applied to all of those 20 pages. Unlike if you use internal style, you have to then open them up one after the other to edit. Now, so what we've done so far is to say we have our index page and we've linked this. Like I said, we don't have some of these pages that we've linked this application to. Let me do my split view. So this is what we have. And we don't have about.html, we don't have service.html, we don't have contact.html yet. So what you can do is that you can create these pages about CSS and all of that so that you can navigate from one page to the other. That's the whole essence of the nav bar, right? We call it navigation bar. So it's basically to just navigate from one page to the other. So you can move from your home page to About Us page. From your About Us page, you can move to services. From services, you can move to Contact Us page. So it's as simple as that, right? So you can link. Another thing that you can do is, you can also use the link. You can use Ahref to also to attach a document for download, right? So for example, now let's say you need your customer to get a copy of probably maybe terms and conditions on your web page, and you want to attach that web page. Do you want to attach that document to your web page such that your user can then download, right? And maybe append their signature and probably maybe send back to you by mail or by whatever means. So you can put up that document for download using the same anchor tag and hypertext reference, which is an attribute of the element called anchor, which is A. So don't forget, I told us at the beginning that we have, this is a tag, right? A, and this is an opening tag. This other one, which has a previous /prefix preceding the text, is the closing tag, right? And this href, which is hypertext reference, is an attribute to this anchor tag, right? And basically, it takes the link, the page you're going to, right? So the same thing you would do. So which means that if you have a document you want to use your user to be able to download, you can as well just do the same thing. And probably, okay, you can just copy this guy. So all of this. So basically what we've learned so far, right, is the fundamentals of HTML and CSS. Now, the rest has to do with application, right? It's virtually impossible for us to cover all of the tags and elements that we have in HTML in this class, right? But what we can do is basically to introduce you to the fundamentals. Then you can then go and build on whatever you've learned, right? So, like I said, there are hundreds of tags, right, in HTML. So you can just pick them up. But like the basic one, like the paragraph, the header, the link, the anchor tag, the div, the table, the forms like we'll be looking at today, like the basic one, right? In HTML5, we also have the headers, we have the nav, we have the footer, we have the article, we have the aside. All of those are elements in HTML5. So you can read them up, like you might want to, you might want to add an article to your web page. You might want to float maybe an article to the sidebar. So you have a tag, you have an element in HTML which is called sidebar. You have an element called aside. You have an element called section. You have an element called header. You have an element called nav. So all of these elements are actually things that you can explore, right? But like I said, it all depends on your approach, and it all depends on what you intend to achieve at the end of the day. So I would just advise you, right, at the end of this class, you might just pick up a web page, right? You can pick up a web page, just check for something online and, try to replicate. That's one of the best way to learn, right? So while practicing, while reading up on HTML and CSS, so based on the knowledge that you had so far, you can just pick up something and begin to, try to replicate that particular site, right? So if they have issues, then you'll be informed that, oh, definitely I still need to do more work, right? So it's as simple as that. So you notice, oh, I'm not able to do this, probably because I think there's still one or two things for me to learn. And like I demonstrated for us last class, right? You can inspect any web page, right? So you can open up a web page. And that's why I said, HTML is one of the most commonly used language on the web, right? Though it's not a programming language, HTML is not a programming language. But as far as the layout, the structure of the web application is concerned, HTML is a must, right? So you can open up a web page, you can right click and click on it, text, and it will show you the HTML elements, all of them that are responsible for that web page. So you can see all of them there, right? So that's basically it. So you can pick up something and begin to do something. That's one of the best way to learn. But like I said, so we can do this to say, so the documents you're putting up for download, you can just all right. So the document you're putting up for download, you can copy it from anywhere in your system, right? Copy it from anywhere on your system, and kindly mute yourself, please. You are distracting me, right? Someone microphone is still on. Okay. All right. So for example, now let's say you want someone to be able to download this p.jpg, right? So you say it could be document, right? All right. So this href, right? So instead of it taking you to that page, so it can then take you to this guy. So it's inside web image p.jpg. So we can say maybe img, the directory, yeah, and this is the guy. All right, so you can do that. Save it. So basically that's it, right? I think there's an attribute that you can add, which is target, and I think you're blank. So this guy will just redirect you to another tab to download that document. Yeah, that's basically it. You can also add this attribute targets, and if you choose blank to this one also, it means that when you click on a new link, right? When you click on the link on the one from the browser, instead of loading that same page, instead of losing that same page on the same tab of the browser that you're currently on, it will just open a new tab on the browser and open that page up for you on the new tab. So basically that's just different, right? So you can just click on this guy from your browser. You can do Ctrl S to save, then launch with a web browser, and you can click on it to download, and it will download this picture for you. So don't forget the extension. You must always have the extension, right? So if it's a Word document, so it could be maybe p.doc. All right. If it's maybe a PowerPoint, if it's any document, just put the document extension and make sure that you reference the right directory, right? Because this P is inside a folder called IMG. So you reference the folder and the file name, right? So that's basically it. Once you do that, launch with the web browser, and you will be able to download that document. It's as simple as that, right? Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, this is the guy, and this is right. This is our index. All right, so that's it. So this is the guy. Don't know why. What's wrong with my system? It's not loading. Yeah, let's check this guy out. So we have this. So this is closed, this is closed. Yeah, it's fine. Something. Okay, yeah, so it should work. But I think maybe I need to restart my system or something. So the link is not working for me. All right. Yeah, let's inspect. All right, so do this. Let's close this guy up. Drag this guy up. Okay. Close this guy. Okay, so this is the inspect element that I was telling you about, right? So you can basically open up any web page and just inspect, right? You will see the HTML elements, and on the right hand side you will see the style, which is the CSS that is used to style the HTML that you can see, right? So it's as simple as that. So let's check this guy out. Menu. Okay. All right. Okay, let me attempt another browser. Open with, all right, let's try Firefox. Okay. Now. Okay, what happens to this link? Okay, let me check it out. All right, so let's check it. So we have this href index. Open and close it. Yeah, home, about us. To be sure we are on the same page, let's do this. Okay. And do Control S to save it as home. All right, let's refresh. Okay, so it's the same page, right? Okay. Okay. So it's home. Okay. Let me do something. All right. Let's copy this guy basically. Let's just do this. All right. The browser, fresh. Let me comment this guy out. All right, controls. All right, done. Okay. Okay, it's of no class. Yeah, so it's possible because of no class. Okay, so this guy, yeah, that's it. So if you check now, so we'll review what is wrong with this link above. So if you check this guy, so you will see a part of my screen, towards the left-hand side, the down part of my screen, right? So you will see showing me the directory, right? Now, so which means that if you've hosted this guy on the web server, which we'll still talk about, right? So you will notice that the directory where this guy would be in whatever directory that has been created on the server, right? So it will no longer reference the local path on your system. It will be referencing the directory on the server. So if you click on this guy now, can you see? So basically, it just open up this guy for me on another tab, basically downloading it for me, right? So if it's a document also, the same thing will happen. You basically just download that document for you and open it up for you in a new tab, like I said. But if you don't want it to want it to be on that same page, right? What you can do is basically just take out this target blank. So with target blank, basically to just retain it on that same page. So it won't open it up on another page. All right, so that's how to pick up document for download. So you can try it and let me know if it works. All right, so let's move on. So now I want us to do something, right? And that's basically adding a form to this guy. So one thing we can do is on this page, right? I would have loved to actually give us that assignment. What I want us to do is we'll float this guy, this home wherever moving construction, we can float it to the left, right? And once we float it, and then put up something else on the right? For example, so if you want with this, please.
Sorry, Mr. I can't hear you.
And then add a form. You can add a form to the right. So when you add a form to here, to this right-hand side, the form element could actually take your inputs. Like you use form basically to collect inputs, to collect data from end users. For example, you want user to give you first name, last name, email address, and all of those details, right? So it's similar to, like, basically, you want to go to a school, you apply, you get a form, you complete the form, and you submit the form. The same principle, right? So when you come online, what you see, when you see maybe you see a field where you have to input your first name, your last name, maybe your email address, your mobile number, and all of that. What you're actually seeing is what we'll refer to as form. So that same form will be made available for you, right, on that same page. Then when you have the form on the page, then you can come and input your data. Enter your first name, enter your last name, enter your email address, enter your phone number. Then once you're done, you submit. So the same process, right? So when you submit, that data you've provided is actually going somewhere into storage, which we'll still look at in this class, right? It doesn't matter whether you're writing, whether you're calling an API or the form is basically just used to collect that information, is being stored on the database, right? So we'll talk about database management maybe in like 3 or 4 classes from now. We look at the database management system, maybe MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, Postgre, MongoDB, and all of that. So we look at all of that. But majorly what I'm trying to say is when you have a form on a page, right? After you've completed the form and you've clicked on submit, all of the data you have inputted is actually going to a storage, which is the database, right? So it now depends whether it's your regular relational database or non-relational database, right? But most likely relational database, because you're actually dealing with simple data like first name, last name, and all of that, right? So those are very basic, simple data, and you will basically require relational database like maybe the SQL Server, the MySQL, the MongoDB, and all of that to manage those data, right? And so basically that's what we want to look at, right? So we'll float this to the left, then we'll have the form on the right-hand side. And like I said, majorly, what all we'll be doing from here is basically to look at maybe some new elements and the application of those elements. That's basically what you just need to keep learning, right? as far as HTML is concerned. Then you might then take it further by now, knowing how to style all of those things, So it's as simple as that. Okay, so you have this div. This div, like I said, div is an element that is basically used to manage other elements on your web page, right? So, and the way it works is like, you have a row, and you are using that div to actually manage other elements. So as you can see, this div is housing H1 elements, and it's also housing these anchor elements, right? So at this point, you can come here again and create another div, right? That's basically what it does. So you have the opening tag and closing tag, right? And you can then do whatever you want to do. Like I said, your HTML is a different thing, right? And your CSS is a different thing, right? So you can just write your HTML. If you don't apply style, you will see what the outcome will be. But once you apply style CSS to it, you can use that CSS to basically beautify it. So in HTML, so basically you just specify the form elements to say, okay, this is a form. So if you have an element that is not on this form, that means when you submit the form, that particular element will not be captured, because that's the whole essence of the form, right? Which means that every element that will be applied as far as this form is concerned, once that form is submitted, whatever element that you have within, once you're able to collect them, you can then submit them and keep them appropriately in whatever tables which you have designed for them. Database simply is organized collection of data, right? So, and those data basically are stored in tables, right? In whatever DBMS you're using, database management system. So if you're using MySQL, for example, so you can create a table. So the database simply means organized collection of data, but database is made up of tables. A database is made up of tables. So you can have 1,000 tables in a database, right? So those tables, for example, so you can have a table. We'll still talk about entity relationship and table and all of that when we get to database. So you can have, just like in your Excel, as many of us are familiar with Excel, Microsoft Excel, right? So you have rows and columns, right? So you know that you can have a table, and the table is made up of rows and columns. So you can have, your columns could be like the title, right? So you can say maybe first name, last name, email address, and phone number. That's your feed. Those are your feeds. Then each row can then be, you can then come and say serial number 1, first name, Ade, last name, Olu, email address, adeolu@yahoo.com, phone number +2348099, and all of that. So, that has been structured such that once you have another first name, put it where first name is supposed to be. Another last name, put it where last name is supposed to be. Another email address, put it where email address is supposed to be. Another mobile number, put it where mobile number is supposed to be. So that is organized collection of data. So you can have all of the data, students all over the place, being submitted to that particular table. And inside that table, that table resides in a database, such that when you now want to collect, when you want to get that information or those data, you can go back to that same table and request for the data using SQL. SQL simply means structured query language. Don't worry, we'll get there. All right, let's move on. So we have this form. So to add elements to the form, depending on whichever element, what you want, the data you want to collect from the user. Don't forget that I told you that you're using form to collect data, right? So depending on the form depending on data you want to collect from the user, from the end user. So for example, now if you want to collect, let's say you want to collect first name, so you use this input element. So the input element has an attribute called text type. So the type of data you want to collect is text, right? Then you can give it a name, another attribute. You can say name and give it a name, maybe first name. All right. Now, because you have not styled it, can you see this is a form that is appearing up here? This guy that you can see here. So you can also add as many as possible, right? So you want to collect another one, so you can say, but before we go there, so let's do something, right? Let's do something. So before we get to this form, right? So let's say we want to use a table. Table is another element in HTML, right? Let's use table to manage this form. All right. So we can also style and do all of that, but let's just use table first. So inside this form, all right, let's say we have a table, right? So let's introduce a table. Now, like I said, table anywhere is made up of rows and columns, right? So you have tables, you have the row, which is the record, and you have the field, right? Which is like the title or the header, right? So you have the table. Now, for this table now, you might not see anything, right? And that's because unless you have given your table a border, that table remains borderless. Now, if you have used Microsoft Excel before, so you notice that in Microsoft Excel, after you have completed all of your data and you want to print, if you print that document like that without actually specifying the border, you'll notice that the file will come out on the paper, but it will be without border, right? So maybe you are expecting after the first name, you want a line, and for each of the record, you want them separated with a clear line, which we refer to as border. But if you don't specify the border and you don't select the border that you want, you just discover that at the end of the day, whatever you have printed does not have a border, right? So the same is applicable. So unless you're actually giving your table a border, you just discover that the table is borderless, and because it's borderless, like nothing is actually there, and you won't see that there's actually a table, right? So you can use, don't forget I told you, you can use any element in HTML can actually be a selector in CSS, right? So for example, let's say we have this guy. So this is our table, and we said our table is made up of rows and columns, right? So let's say we then say, oh, table row is TR. That's column rather, sorry. And TD is the table data, which is the row. So if you have one TR, you are basically saying this table is of one column. So if you have another TR, so you are saying this table has 2 columns. Let's try it out. So let's say, to even make it feasible, let's try it. You can say maybe table border, maybe 2 pixel, right? Okay, so no data yet. So let's say inside our TR, which is the table row now. So let's say we want to have TDs. So we have TDs, depending on number of rows you want in a column. So you have TD, you can say, so you can say, let's say, first name, kind of, yeah. So let's say first name, and that's T, that's inside this, you want this TD. So let's say, let's duplicate this guy and make it 2 TDs inside 1 TR. And let's see what the outcome will be. All right. So let's change this one to last name. All right. So you can see. Let's apply some CSS to style it, because of our background, everything seems to be taking everything like seems to be black. So let's apply some CSS to style it up. So let's do let's first start with our table itself. So let's say that's our selector now. So for our table, we can say border color, right? So if that's what you want, right? So you can say border color to even make it kind of different. Okay, so that color has applied. You can specify the table width. That's how wide you want the table to be. It could be in pixel, it could be in percentage, right? Like I said, it all depends. So percentage is relative. So which means that you are comparing with something, right? When you use percentage. But if you don't want to use percentage, you can use pixel, which is like your meter or centimeter, right? So you can say, let's see what 500 pixel, which is, so you can see what 500 pixel looks like. Okay, so instead of, let's quickly apply the border here too. Border, say solid, maybe 1 pixel. All right, so if we do this, let's take it out from our index page, right? So instead of applying this border here, all right, so that's it. So instead of using an attribute, so with style is using CSS. Okay, so the width of the table is with this, and the border is that. So depending on how you want table to be, like you can apply border radius and all of that. But if you're not doing that, so we can go say maybe the next one, maybe your TR. So in this TR, you can say maybe fonts or color. So color, you can give it a background, anything you want, right? So color could be, let's choose a color, maybe let's choose white color, ash FFF, white color, right? And do you want to give it a background? So you can say maybe background color. That's if you want to give it a background, right? All right. So basically that's it. So you can see, so we apply this color and this color, yeah, as a background. So save it. Let's go back to our index. So we can say, okay, so we have first name, last name. So you can then begin to load using the same method, right? So which means that inside this TR now, which means that you want to form another row. So you have TR is one row already. But inside one row, how many columns do you want inside that one row? That's what TD represents, right? So you have a table. The number of TRs, so you would see this is one TR. These are another TR, which means that this table is of 2 rows. But you are not seeing the second row now because that second row is still empty, right? So which means that if you copy the same thing that we have in our first row, and we'll say Control C, and we'll paste the same thing inside this TR, inside the second TR. Can you see? So which means that this table is of 2 rows, row 1, row 2. And it's also of 2 columns. So this is 2 rows, 2 columns table. So which means that depending on the number of columns that you want now, that's what will determine the number of rows that you want. This is one of the ways. It's not the only way, like I said. There is no single approach when it comes to design. It's all about creativity, right? So you can use many ways to get the same results. That's why it's very easy for someone to dictate. If you're given an assignment and you copy one another. So it's very easy for the instructor to know, because you can't just think the same way when it comes to this thing, right? The approach might be, it might look the same, but in the real sense, when you look at it deeply, you discover that, okay, there are some changes, there are some differences, there are differences. And that's why, it could be very easy for someone to know if someone is trying to play games. Okay, so depending on number of rows and number of columns, right? So, but what we want to do in the real sense, we actually want, this is what we want, right? But we want it such that the other side would then be a text field, right? So we want 2 columns. We want as many columns as possible, but we want 2 rows in each of those columns. Another thing that you can do is, for example, now, let's say you have just for the purpose of learning. So if I take up one for here, for example, let me take out one of the rows, right? So this is what I have. So I have, let's say, what I intend doing here is to say, probably maybe just to say, kindly complete this table. Yeah, something like that. Kindly complete the form below. All right. Don't mind me. All right. But in the real sense, so you notice, then the question would be, someone would then say, oh,
sir,
yeah.
This kindly, why is it like this, sir?
That's the way I type it. All right, so kindly complete the form below. Now, the question is, someone will then notice to say, oh, why can't I just make this guy a single row, right? Such that this can then be on the single row, like, because from the output now, it's still showing that it's still two different columns. The only thing is that the text is occupying one column and the other column is still empty, right? It doesn't matter if I've deleted it, though I've deleted the second TD from here. But in the real sense, it's still there, right? Because that space has already been reserved for it, because it's just the table data, which is the second column, right? But there is also an attribute that we can use to achieve this, right? So the last one that we have left, so you can just span this guy using what we call cospan, and just cospan things, right?
Sir,
So when you co-span it, can you see now? So this single row has been co-span into two. Hello.
sir, what's the use of form tag? Sir, what is the form tag?
The use of okay, don't worry, I will allow you to ask question, right? So we are almost done. It's almost 7:30. Okay. Let's
Use form. Sir, what do you
so sorry, my internet connection is actually fluctuating. So let me quickly complete this. I can allow for questions. All right, so kindly mute so that we can. It's actually not very strong. Okay. All right. So I co-span into two, right? So I can then inside my for the second row. So this is my column one. First name. This one is my first name is my column one. The last one is my column two, right? So what I can do is
Sir, can you, I can't hear you, sir. Is
please
it the net?
don't unmute yourself. I'll give you time to express. You're distracting me, please. All right.
Sorry, sir, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Add this guy up. So I've added this in place now, so it's an input feed. So which means that enter your first name here. We can style. Wow. Is it any better now? Hello, can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir.
Hello. I'm so sorry, my internet connection is really messing up. Okay, can you hear me now? Is it better now?
It's better.
Okay, all right. So let me share my screen. All right. So I have this first name here. So I can change this guy in my third row now to last name. Then change this last name to an input feed, right? To get the input for last name. So I can add an attribute called name so that I can differentiate this guy from this other one. So this one is first name and this one name. his last name. All right. Now, so then we can have the last row. Let's add another TR for submit. Let's just leave it at that for now. We can build it up later. So this one can be maybe for this TR, we can have this TD, and this TD will now be button, right? Button, and will be maybe submit. All right. This guy, what we can also do is we can, if you want, you can also postpone this guy.
Sir.
The entire. We can style of this. All right. So this is the outcome, right? The whole essence of this, like I said, now we've not really applied style to this thing, right? But we can then style it to look like what we want.
Sir, I have a question.
I will allow you to ask your question. Just hold on, right? Like I said, I'll let me finish this up, then I'll allow you to ask your question. All right, so you can see, basically the whole essence of this is to just allow the user to input, right? So, because we want to collect data from the user. But as it stands now, though the user can input these requested details, when they click on submit, the data is actually going nowhere because there is nothing to help us to process the data, right? This is not where we want the form. So, which means that the same way we apply style to this guy, we can also use the same thing to push this guy down, right? And then float this, what we have already, to the left, and float this form to the right. So in that case, we can have this, your home, by the left, and we have this new form by the right. But basically, like, as it stands now, this is the outcome. This is the result, right? And this result, it means that someone can then input details, get those details, and submit them, right? But in the real sense, this information is actually going nowhere for now, right? But just for the purpose of teaching, right? That's what we've done so far, to say, okay, we can actually apply a table, and inside that table, which means that if you also need to list something, right? You can actually put those lists. For example, now let's say you have list of food or something. So you can have table, you can use table to structure that list and then number them out. Maybe you use OL or that list to then list them out as you want. So you can do all of that. But like I said, the arrangement now, it depends on you, right? But basically, I'm just introducing you to some of the other elements that we have and how to use them in HTML. Now, when we get to JavaScript, I will then show us how we can use JavaScript to collect all of this information from the form and then process them. Or when we get to PHP or whichever scripting language that we intend to use, we can then collect all of this data and keep them somewhere, process them appropriately, right? But for now, what we're just looking at is just those HTML tag and the CSS, right? From next week, if I would do a simple assessment of the class, and if I notice that many of us have basic grasp of notes, we might just do a brief recap of what we've learned so far as far as each.
Sir. Sir.
Man, who is saying this, sir? Let the man teach now. You ask question later, please.
Please, if you can hear me, right? I know many of us have questions, right? So let me take time to attend to all of those questions now, right? I'll give us an assignment to test what we've learned so far as far as HTML and CSS is concerned towards next class. Based on that assessment, right, that would determine what we'll do next week. If we're going over HTML, if we're going over HTML and CSS again, or we just move straight to JavaScript, right? But I'll also drop a link for us where we can actually read more about other elements of HTML and how to apply them, right? Like I said, it's very, very simple, depending on what you want to achieve, but all of the basic tags and elements that you need to populate your web page, we have touched majority of them. All right, so you can ask your question now. If you're not audible enough, you can just drop the question in the chat room. I will read through them and I will answer them one after the other.
Sir, please, what is the use of form?
Okay, so form basically, like I said, it's used to collect information from the end user. The end user is the person that is visiting your web page, right? The person who wants to get information or access your web page. So you use just the same way, like, before you become part of this class, you completed a form online, right? On maybe Code Africa website or somewhere else. So a form was presented to you on that web page. You completed the form. That form was submitted somewhere. We're able to collate the data from the backend, from the database, and we then use those data to reach out to all of the registrants. So the same way you use form to collect data from the end user. So when you complete the form and you submit the form, we automatically collect those data and keep them in a table in the database. We can then access those tables and retrieve all of those information and do whatever we want with the data, right? So, for example, if you want to create an account on Facebook, so Facebook will first of all present you with a form and say, fill out this form. Give us your first name, give us your last name, your date of birth, and all of those data. So once you submit the data, that data will be used to create an account for you on Facebook, right? Then for subsequent use, when you come in onto Facebook and you enter your email address and maybe your password that you have chosen for yourself, the system automatically check the email address and the password that you have inputted against what has been stored in the database. If it matches, the system will allow you to progress. If it doesn't, it will return a response to say, sorry, username and password does not match. All right. So I've tried to use image as a background, but mine is not working. Okay, so two things could be responsible. Is either the image you're trying to use is not available, or you are not referencing the right path. So, for example, now, if the image is located inside a folder, that folder must be specified before the image name. If not, the image will not come up because that image directory is wrong. So if you have created, if you didn't create any image folder before your image, make sure that you don't add any in your structure. Make sure that there is no folder. But if you have created a folder, maybe call it images and the image reside inside that folder, make sure you reference the right directory for that image to come up. So if the image exists, check the directory. All right. Okay, I don't understand this submit, please. Okay, don't worry. Like I said, after you have completed the form, right? What you do is that even if you are giving a physical form, right? After you have completed the form, the physical form, you have to give the form back to the person that gave it to you, right? That's basically what you are doing. You are submitting. So to submit is to say, okay, I've completed this information. Then you click submit for the system to really recognize that truly you have submitted the form. All right.
Sir, sorry, sir, but sir, what's the tag I use to get the picture to the background?
Okay, so is called IMG, right? Image. This is the image. This is, let me go back to this guy. So if you had it depends. If you want to use HTML to add image, the tag is called IMG. Right? This is the tag, right? Let me just show you. IMG. This is what you use. Now, this source is talking about the directory of the image you want to add. So when you say SRC simply means source. So specify the source. And the source is advisable that the source should also be inside the same folder you have created, which is the parent folder now. So which means that in my own case, if you look at this, my own case, so I have a folder on my desktop called web. Inside that folder called web, I created another folder called IMG, which is my image folder. Then inside that image folder, I have my image called p.jpg. Now, if I want to put my source now, my source will not be web/img/p.jpg, because web is my parent folder.
Yes, sir, I can't see what you are explaining. I can't see your screen, please.
Same here.
Okay. All right, let me share again. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
So if you want to use HTML, if you want to use HTML to add image, this is what you would do. You use now this source. I'm saying that if you see, this is my web folder. This web, the folder I created on my desktop, I created another folder called IMG, which is for image. I copy and pasted my image p.jpg inside this folder called IMG. Now, if I want to reference the directory of this p.jpg now, I will not include the parent folder, which is this web. All I'll just do is to pick this my IMG folder and the name of the file. So to reference that, basically what I'll just do is to say IMG, which is the folder that contains the image, then the image itself, p.jpg. And this will automatically, if you notice what happened, this image has been laid on the background. So if you check very well from my screen, so you will notice that there's an image now which has been added just below my links now. So it added this new image to it. If I take it out, if I delete this guy, can you see now? But if I added the JPEG again, it's coming up and it's covering every other thing that so I can style it to achieve what I want at the end of it. As if you want to use HTML to add image to your web page. But which in this case, what we have basically what we've done is to use it.
Sir, what
And in our
if
CS have done is we have used it to add image, which is the background image. We have it like that. And we have used this image background. Go ahead. Hello, okay.
So what if the folder is not named IMG? Will it still work?
Hello? Sir? No. I'm not sleeping.
You join shortly, network issue.
sir, what if you download an image but it does not work? Because I tried it, but it didn't work.
That question has already been answered. It is either you did not get the source rightly or you did not use the reference very well. He has answered the question already. Where the host can go now?
Yeah, sir.
My connection very poor. My internet connection is very poor tonight. I don't know what's going on. I've been trying to switch from one internet connection to the other, but it seems the connection is still quite poor.
Okay, sir. Probably you could give the assignment now so that you can have
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right, that's fine. So don't worry. Like I said, next week by God's grace, let me give the assignments now. Next week by God's grace, I will assess us, and based on that assessment, then determine what we'll do next. All right. So the assignment I want to give us is I want you to, apart from the tags that we've talked about in this class, right? I want you to apply 20 other tags in HTML and style them in CSS. So all of the elements that we have talked about, the table elements, the paragraph elements, the H1 element,
Sir, can we repeat?
And all of those elements. Apart from all of those elements that we have applied, right? I want you to apply 20 other tags or elements in HTML. Then apply CSS. Style those elements.
I'm busy.
Like I said, I mentioned the header element, the aside element, the section element, the article element. I want you to read up 20 other elements, right? And then apply CSS to those elements. Okay, the network is very bad. Okay. All right, I'll try and drop the assignment on the WhatsApp group. I'll try and drop the assignment on the WhatsApp.
And the link to read up on the tags, please.
Yeah, I
If
will
you
do
can do
that.
that, like,
Please, so I'm not on the WhatsApp group, sir. I'm not on the WhatsApp group, please.
The group. The link is on the group.
Okay.
The link should be in the chat room, so you can check it out. So you can just click on the link to.
Sir, I have a
Yeah.
group to. I have a website for you guys to go. W3 School.
Yeah, it's a very good place to start with. W3 School is a good place to start with. So you can check it out. Check out W3 Schools. So, okay, W3 School. W3 School.
Sir, please can you drop the website too on the WhatsApp group?
Okay, yeah, let me copy it now and just W3 Schools.
You can just write W3 Schools now of appear there.
Yeah, I just drop it now, so you can let me check it. I'll just send the link.
It's easy.
Okay,
Just
so
go to Chrome,
yeah,
then type W3 School.
No, very simple now. That is what's supposed to be.
I know, but
yeah. So I just dropped it on the WhatsApp group now. So that's the link to the email.
Please, W3 what, please?
W3 Schools. I've dropped the link on the WhatsApp group, so you can just click on it on the WhatsApp group. It will take you to the HTML course. You can just follow it one after the other and apply them. But beyond this, I want you to use it to produce something against next class, so that I can actually use it to assess us. So use it to apply it and come up with some. I would do a brief review in 10-15 minutes of next class will be to review what we've done. Then that will then determine what we'll do next week. All right. I think this is where we'll stop tonight. My internet is really misbehaving tonight. But like I said, please read up. I'll drop on some other material in the WhatsApp group. You can read it up, then do the assignments. Then next week we'll meet by God's grace to review and then move on. So at this point, I would like to hand over back to the organizer of this program to address us before we close for tonight.
Sorry. Sir, I can't see the background. The background is black.
Yes, that's what it has been since.